Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop. Today we're going to be talking about plain furniture and how to restore it. So this presentation was recorded at the MWTCA National Conference in June of 2025. And the person you're going to be hearing is Gordan Adison. He makes and restores totes that are just unbelievable. Cracked, split, broken, pieces missing, and he will restore them to a point where you can't find the crack on them. He does an amazing job. He's actually going to talk us through all of the detail and how he does it. The first half is the theory and the background to it. And in the second half, we're actually going to go in and see him work on one and replace and fix it. So let's have a little bit of fun with this. Now I do have to warn you, the presentation was actually two different presentations. The first one was with Gordan Adison, myself, and Rex. So I'm going to be taking Rex and I out of this and just add in Gordan redoing the handle later on in the day. So without further ado, let's get on to the presentation. Ooh, only 55 minutes.
I'd like to introduce Gordan here. We have Gordan Adison.
Thank you.
We have Rex Kruger and James Wright, and they're going to be talking to you today, this afternoon, and also this evening about wood repair and wood restoration. Okay, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. As Mark said, my name is Gordan Adison. I have been a woodworker my entire life, and I've kind of transgressed and climbed through some different mediums, from cabinetry to custom fireplaces to furniture. I did some guitar work. I don't play guitar. That turned out to be horrific in that you produce a product and you don't know if it works. So I'm not a luthier. So moving on. Moved to Southern California. My job took my wife and I west, and I was without a shop, and I couldn't be without woodworking. That's my escape. And so I would find myself at the bench. I gradually migrated into rosewood totes, and it was Michael Jenks, I think, that was pushing me, and he's not here. But Jenks would send me parts, and I'd fix them and send them back, and that kind of became a thing. And eventually it was Michael that said, hey, Gordan, you need to, if you would, you need to share some of this stuff because you're getting better each time. And I felt the same way. So that's really how I ended up here. So today we're going to talk about hand planes. I'm talking about Brazilian rosewood specifically. Rex is going to talk about beech, and James is going to close us out with make it from scratch and do his thing too. So that's kind of the trio that we have set up for you. I also thought I had 60 minutes, and I'm a talker. I just said, we're never going to make this work. So my presentation was abbreviated down. Now that we've got a little bit of space, and I realize that we don't have somebody at 3:30 running us off the stage, I can start to work with it. So we're going to try and get through this in about 60 minutes, and then give us some time for questions and answers. The best part is we're coming back at 7:30, and we're going to do a continuation. I'm going to do a glue up. Rex and James are going to help. James offered to put his camera on the table, so you can stay seated. We'll put the image right up on the screen, and I'll walk through a glue up, and I have the stuff that I need to do it. So that's going to be fun, and then we're just really going to keep it open and have a nice evening to get through the things that we didn't touch on. Brazilian rosewood, okay? Why restore it? There's three things. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys know why, right? And my last bullet item there, collectible. If you have a $1,000 number one, and it's got a chip, it's missing a horn, it's got a broken toe, I can restore that, and we'll make it a $1,600 plane. So there's reasons, just not monetarily, but also from a collectible point of view. So people will restore rosewood for collectible reasons. The one in the middle is obvious to me. I have my grandfather's planes. They're heirloom planes, and I am the recipient of Grandpa's plane handles. People will send them to me. So this is really important to me. It means a lot to our family. We would just like to have it restored so that it looks as it would have had it not been on the floor and broken into two. So I'll do heirloom restorations for people because they want it in their family. And then the sappy part of me, it's Brazilian rosewood, right? It's been harvested and it's broken. That doesn't mean I have to throw it away. So I'm going to restore it, and I think the preservation part of it is important. So that's really one of the driving factors. And if you've seen some of my work and you see what I started with and what we ended with, you've got to be thinking, he must have spent countless hours on it. This guy's not making a nickel on this stuff. And why did he spend hours and hours and hours on a 12-piece tote to make it one piece again? And really, that's what drives me. It comes back to the preservation part of it. If we can do it, I'm going to try it. So that's really what's going on. And then my bottom statement there, you guys know that Brazilian rosewood is not illegal, right? It's protected, which just means that we're not going to harvest it in Brazil. The rainforest, degradation and the things that people were concerned about, the CITES agreement's in place. There are measures and steps that keep us from, freely exchanging Brazilian rosewood across the globe. And on certain websites and in certain environments, I'll hear from time to time someone say, rosewood, it's illegal, you can't do that. It's not illegal. So help with that. You guys know that. I know you understand that a protected species can be in your hands. It's not illegal. So here we are. We're going to buy rosewood. If I'm going to make repairs and we're going to fix some things, we need rosewood. And I'm going to tell you, that's one of my secrets. If I work with Brazilian rosewood, it's just easier. I'm not working with walnut. I'm not trying to bring a piece of maple in and color it and make it look like rosewood. My repairs look like rosewood because they're rosewood. That's the magic. So the effort I put into it is to buy the right material to make the repair, and then it's all downhill from there. When I shape this, we bring it back to its original geometry, it just looks seamless. So rosewood's still out there. I just said it's protected. There are agreements in place, so choose wisely, do your research, and be skeptical. If you're buying something online, vet it out, right? I had I'll call it a situation. I had a gentleman approach me, New York area. I'm not in New York. He said, I've got a bounty of Brazilian rosewood. I've seen your stuff. You need to own this. And it seemed too good to be true. It smelled a little like a skunk to me, and that's the rule. If it smells like a skunk, it's probably a skunk. So send me a bunch of money and I'll send you a bunch of rosewood. I don't know. I don't think so. I'll send you a little bit of money and you send me one piece and we'll check it out. And that's how I proceeded. A little extra shipping, a little extra caution. I knew what I was walking into. So in the end, that turned out to be a very good purchase. The rosewood was in fact what he said it was. And I like dusty stuff. That's going to speak to, it was in Grandpa's shop. It's been here a long time. It's got schmutz on it. And I can clean it up and find the Brazilian rosewood underneath. And that's kind of a telltale sign. And I've also been offered some rosewood that looks like it was just cut, right? It's a little too bright. It's a little too shiny. It's a little too wet, if you will. And again, I'm going to pass on that. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's from. So if you're buying rosewood from a distance, just do your research and kind of vet out the person too a little bit. Find out where they are and why. What's the story behind it? There are salvage options for you. Rosewood furniture, I know that sounds horrible, but I have encountered some small end table pieces or rosewood furniture. It's huge in Asia. They're large consumers of rosewood products. And sometimes things will find their way from Asia back to the US. They'll be in Grandma's possession and then she's going to let go of it, or it's at an estate auction and it's Brazilian rosewood. So I'm going to keep track of time too because I know I won't run out. So rosewood furniture is one option. Pianos. Again, I can talk at great lengths about this, but I'll just throw it out there. I disassembled a grand piano. It's Brazilian rosewood, and it was 1867 out of Boston. Okay, so this piano will never make music again. It's now into some hand planes, and it's in a little jewelry box back to the owner. But the point is, and the musicians, right, will want to roast me on this. The casting is cracked. The piano will not play again. It can't be tuned. It can't be restored at a reasonable price. The seller, right, who wanted $1,500 for this piano, eventually called me and asked me to just take it out of the house. Can you come and get it? And what they learned is that they would have to pay money to have it removed from their house. That's what it was. So, Dave Corinth, who's not here, has also done some piano salvage work, and I will tell you that you will find amazing old growth materials, from chestnut to maple, spruce for the soundboard. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And if you salvage everything, you can still sleep at night. I will say though, there are very few solid rosewood pieces. There's a lot of veneer and amazing craftsmanship, you know, from 1867, how they accomplished some of the things that they did back then with the tools they had, I have no idea, but very impressive. It's quite a journey to disassemble piano, but if you want to know more about that, we can talk more. It can be dangerous too. I have a story about a lot of tension, right? A lot of tension in a piano, so you have to go about that the right way. And then last, broken planes. I try not to. I always, if I see a broken plane and it's got good rosewood on it, it's not a harvest for me. I'm not going to take it apart. I'm usually trying to put things back together. So if I encounter something that was as part of a bigger picture, I'll usually try and restore it further and put it back into its place. But I'm not out buying planes and pulling the rosewood off them. I don't think that makes sense to me. Restorations for me fall into three major categories. Horns, right? That's number one. And how many times have we seen, I have a whole bag of them, I bought them today, right? Hornless totes, hornless handles. They're just broken off, they're rounded off, they're full of sweat and determination, and they have a great story, but I know that I can restore it, and we can bring it back to its original shape, and put it back into a plane, and make it whole again. So horn restoration is where I started. And then mid-body breaks, I call them. Those are the heavy fractures. That's usually an impact of some kind, and there'll be damage or a scar or a mark that tells a story. But I will also tell you, because I've done many, many of these, there are several plane handles that are just simply cracked. I don't see any evidence of an impact. I don't know what the story is. I don't know if that's a wood drying process, or I don't know what its environment was for its life, if it was Arizona or wherever. But I have definitely brought some back together, and they absolutely look seamless because there was no impact and no bruise and no blowout. So those are the fun ones. But mid-body breaks, I'll talk a little bit about. And then old repairs, where a craftsman has done their best with the tools they have to put screws in, pins in, nails. I've seen, you know, finishing nails driven into planes, and those are kind of an animal of their own. It takes a lot more time, and you have to be a little more creative. So I'm going to talk real quick about what's going on with those guys too. But I typically break things into three places. I created a template. It's the you don't know what you don't know scenario. How do you put a horn back on a plane if you don't know what the true shape was? And the acrylic template helps me look through my work. If I hold it up to the plane, it allows me to first visualize what kind of material. I'll just talk to the screen. I can see what kind of material I need, and it helps me size my replacement. To dress the surface, I'm going to run that across the table saw, flatten it off, and it's a simple, attachment. So we're just going to use adhesive. We're going to glue this block back on, and you can see my pencil outline here from the template, which tells me how I'm going to finish this off. Next, it would be a bandsaw cut, and then rasp it, shape it, recenter the hole if I've covered it up, and we're back in business. But I do use templates. If you've seen those, I have several of them up here, and I find that helps me get the job done. If you don't, you run into the potential of a horn that might be, again, if you're talking restoration, you can see the geometry. If you've seen one that's not original, horn's too short, horn's too long, it just looks different, right? So I like to try and bring things back to the original size and shape. And also, I'm going to avoid hitting the lat adjuster that way as well. Well, there you go. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself. So this is how I'm using that template on the one that I'm holding actually in my hand. So place it on there. Now I can trace it. It's a quick bandsaw cut. The template also works if I just want to cut something new. You can set it on paper and trace it, and that's fine too. So horn replacements are, again, pretty standard. If you're going to try this out, you're going to get started, a little scrap of rosewood like this, a flat surface, an adhesive, and you're off and running. There's a couple tools that you'll need. This one, the plane is sitting on my table up here, is an example of the other end of the spectrum on horns. I call these palominos, right? You've got some sapwood on the bottom. This is the original plane handle. sapwood on the bottom, the heartwood up at the top, and the horn's missing. And the owner said, you know, wouldn't that be cool if we had a continuation of that sapwood and we introduced an additional sapwood. So that's a restoration where I used a material that would be, say, non-traditional. Let's try and add some bling and add a little bit of a distraction to it, kind of like what Mark said with your boxwood brace. If you add some natural features, it kind of takes away from the joinery and the fact that the horn was replaced. So that was kind of a fun one. I'm glad to see that the plane found its way to Erie, and the owner brought it back for show and tell. So that's about it on horns. I think the next picture it is. I'm going to throw this up there, and I'm going to ask you a question first. What do you think's going on here? That's an original Stanley handle. And you've probably never seen this before, but what a cool audience to be the first to see that. It's 1927, and the top is all rubber. And this is at the Stanley Works in New Britain, Connecticut, in their archive. And what that tells me is that in 1927, they were dealing with horn problems. So that's not a modern day problem. These aren't breaking off horns because in 1970 somebody dropped it or it's been beat around for 15 years. This is 1927, hard rubber, and they were starting to play with what I believe to be solutions. How are we going to address the horn issue? So it's not attractive. It was pretty cool to see, but there it is in their possession. I thought you guys might like to see that one. Okay, I'm moving away from horns. Now we're breaking bodies in half. We've got this thing completely broken in half, and I'm going to put it back together. There's a lot of adhesives. I'm not going to argue about tight bond and high glue. You can take your pick. Most of them are going to work great. There's one or two that don't, but most of them are going to do just fine. I use epoxy, and what I have learned and what I've started to refine is that if I'm going to put a joint together on a full body break, I call it a clamshell method. I'm going to leave, you can barely see it in this overhead, I'm going to leave about a 0.5 millimeter of a perimeter, but then I'm going to go ahead and clean the entire surface and I'm going to relieve it a little bit. So when I put the two together, I kind of get this, right? So all my pressure when I put this clamp in place, and you don't have to clamp epoxy, I know that, but I'm put a little pressure on that plane handle, I'm going to bring that together and close the gap. My epoxy is the gooey center, it's still in there, it has a little room, and it's a slow cure, so it's going to absorb itself into the freshly opened pores, and it gives this tenacious bond. It's a super great joint, and it helps me hide that joint. So we're going to do that at 7:30. I brought one, and we're going to do that live. Like I said, James is going to put his camera on my hands, and we'll do a glow up, and you'll see that a little bit up close and personal. So that's what I do, and if it's done right and you can get a nice tight fit, it makes it, again, it makes it seem pretty easy. Another historical photo out of the New Britain, Connecticut archives again, a full rubber Stanley tote in 1930 with models and a blended approach to make it look like rosewood. So it's super dense. It was starting to harden. It was not very, how do I want to say, it wasn't very pliable. It was, I think it'll probably eventually turn brittle, but again, to give you an example that why are they dealing with this? Because they're breaking handles, I think they're trying to make things durable, they're trying to make things strong, and you know they went to aluminum as well, and they had some aluminum totes that were out there for people, but that was a good example of dealing with the troubles, okay? So last one for me would be, I said owner repairs or historical repairs. In this case, the horn has been broken, but then the owner put 2 wood screws into it, further added to the problem. Now the horn itself is cracked. So it's pretty much shattered. This person really, really wanted this one to stay together. So what I did is, and that's a little video, what I did is use my piano parts, right? So the veneer that I harvest out of the piano was formed, steam fit, and then I relieved the entire top of the tote. So all the shattered and screw holes, and I filled one and left one, and the cracks that were there, I'm able to put that little cap back on and kind of hide it that way. So the end product looks like this. Now, again, at a true woodworker, you see the grain isn't quite right. That looks like veneer. Like, why is the grain here? Why is the grain here? There's something up. If you're discerning eye and you're looking at that, you can tell that there's been work to it. But what I remind people is that once we put this back on the plane, you've got your brass, barrel nuts in place, and the plane itself has an appeal. People don't automatically go right to the tote. I'm not just looking at wood to see what Gordan did. You're kind of admiring the whole thing. So repairs can get lost in the big picture, and this was a technique I've now used probably a dozen times, where if I just don't want to deal with anything, because that's one of the most visible surfaces. If you're holding onto a plane, you're looking right at the top of that toe. So that's worked pretty well. And again, that's an epoxy process, and I clamp it and hold it into place. So there's 3 different things that are going on, and I have talked enough. I am going to turn this over to Rex.
I've got a question.
Yes.
When you're making a repair on rosewood, do you do anything, rosewood is an oily wood.
It
Do
is.
you do anything to the wood before you glue it?
Most of the time I don't. I just clean it in terms of, not chemically, I clean it with a Dremel or a little scorp. I'll peel off oxidized layers, I'll peel off old adhesive. I just like to expose the pores. If you open the wood up and it's a fresh cut, then the adhesive will bond.
Because I clean it with MEK, methyl ethyl ketone,
Yeah,
which gets all the oil out of it.
yeah, I don't like that stuff,
Well, it's
MEK.
potent.
It's
Salt.
potent, right, so it's dangerous. In long term, right, if you're doing that every day, lots of ventilation and take care of yourself. But no, I have, again, let me talk about this real quick. I'm gonna tell you what I did on the adhesives. I liked epoxy. I would have people challenge me on tight bond, and I use this, I use that. So I took rosewood totes. They're all original vintage totes. Broke every one. They're already broken. These are out of stock. They're already damaged. So I broke every one, and I did different adhesives: epoxy, polyurethane, tight bond, hide glue, and then I turned them into an independent lab and gave them the structure, and I said, break them, right? And let's see if they break at the joint. The polyurethane, Gorilla Glue, right, which you had to wet the surfaces, is trying to expand. The polyurethane was the only one that broke at the joint. Tight bond did amazingly well. I was floored. I just didn't think that it would. The other epoxies, even a quick 5-minute cure epoxy will do okay, but the 5-minute cure epoxy cures so quick, it doesn't have time to saturate into the wood like the slow cure stuff does. So that was one thing where we did the test and I turned it over to somebody else. What did we learn from that? There's a couple things I wouldn't do, but I learned that there's a lot of good adhesives out there. So that was one test. The second was and I just lost my train of thought, but I was going on the adhesives, breaking them.
Okay, I've got another question. How
Yeah.
do you keep the pieces aligned with the hole that goes through?
There's several ways. I'll peg it, so we'll use a small consumable softwood dowel, and I'll turn it to fit, because you can't just stick a dowel in there. It's not always tight. But one of the things that I try and work toward is always squeeze that joint perpendicular, right? There's some folks that'll say, threaded rod and a couple nuts, and the problem with that is the break is always horizontal, and now you're applying pressure at an angle, and that's just a recipe for a shift, right? It's going to happen. Now you're struggling to keep it aligned. So I'll show that, and I'll give you a few ideas on how to keep those things aligned. But that's super important. The beauty of epoxy is that you don't need to squeeze it, right? It's chemically cured. So if I have things in line, I can literally use masking tape, right? So I'm using painter's tape, put it back together. I always do that dry fit. I'm happy with my fit, and then I'll open it back up, apply the epoxy, tape it back up, and let it sit. Just leave it alone, and the next day it's going to be fine. So applying a lot of pressure on slippery stuff is usually a sticky mess. So there's one more question back here.
Most of the chemicals you use to clean new rosewood will leave a stain.
Okay.
So after you get it all put back together and sanded and say, oh, I can put a finish on this, it'll show.
Interesting. I use acetone. I'll drop mine in acetone, and I'll take the original finish off. Sometimes I'm trying to figure out how it was glued in the first place. If I'm repairing somebody's previous fix, and it's high glue, I'll microwave it or heat it. I have a little toaster oven, I'll put it in there, heat it slow. That's a real quick way to disassemble anything that's high glue. And then I find epoxy that it's epoxy that just wasn't put together well, and now we got to get that off there, and Dremel is the only way to machine it off.
I've got another question. What do you do in a case where a handle breaks in half and somebody tapes it or something and they just use it for a couple of years and then it wears that?
It's all rounded off.
Yeah,
You're missing
so when
material.
you put it back together,
Yeah.
you don't have it tight anymore.
I don't. I'll put it back together, right, so that I have the size and the dimension correct. And then I'll put it on a sled, and I will plow it back out with the table saw. And then I'll drop a wafer back in, and then shape the wafer so that the two parts never leave, so the height is always right. But if that's a really ugly break. Those are just plain hard to fix.
Yeah.
So it's gonna get rounded off, and if you're just going for structural and all I wanna do is repair something, that's a different conversation. I'm not just repairing, I'm trying to make it look as it did 50 or 100 years ago.
It's a little better.
There you go. Okay.
A little more detail.
Digital microscope, and it's Bluetooth to my computer or to my iPad. And what this allows, I wear readers, I need my glasses, but what this allows me to do is inspect material literally in my lap. So I can just hold on to it this way, I can focus, and then I can look at the image on my computer. And when I'm looking at rosewood end grain, or I'm looking at cracks and damage, this allows me to take a really close look. So sometimes you'll see things that are scary you didn't want to see, but it's kind of cool. It's a little bit of science in the middle of our woodworking. As I looked at the end of this, I see a stress fracture. So not only are we making a repair and we know what we're dealing with, but I'm also now aware that even once we've done our initial break, there's going to be some other issues that we should be aware of. And so that's a tool that I really like. I should have charged it up more before we came tonight, but there's that one. And then the other thing is, of course, pardon me? Yeah, I didn't put it on our list. This is just a simple, it's a simple Amazon purchase. Yep, and it says Iowaback. I think there's several that you plug into your computer. You don't have any issues with that. And I did use one of those for a while. And then I saw one online that was Bluetooth, and I switched. And this gave me a lot more flexibility. Honestly, I don't know much more than that, but you have to download an app, and if you're not a techie person, then it could be a little bit daunting. But once it was set up, and once I have the convenience of seeing a big screen, I'm not trying to compare myself to a surgeon, but if you can move your hands and look at something close and watch your screen, it's pretty impressive how you can get a close look at things. And like I said, it's very revealing. One of my other favorite tools, of course, I said I wear glasses. This is an inexpensive set too, called Vision Aid. I think, is that in frame? Mm-hmm. Cool. And I can still wear my readers, and I can flip this down if I need to. A little too quick. I can flip this down if I need to, and it does have a light. So if you want to illuminate what you're working on and you want it right in your face, this works out really well for me. And if I'm talking to somebody or I need to do something with my glasses on and I'm just doing my computer work or what have you, I can still function. So there's a lot going on there, I know, but this is one of the most comfortable sets that I found. And again, I like to see things really, really close. And it just makes it a lot easier to know that we're getting close proximity and tight work done. But this is another online purchase, and they stay together very well. I'm struggling up here. Pardon me?
Put some epoxy on it.
But I could epoxy that. I don't have any. Anybody know any glue, people? So there's two of my little magnification toys that I use, but I think those are very helpful. So what I want to do tonight, in our earlier session, we went through a lot of material. If you weren't here, and I spoke a little bit about rosewood and totes, and Rex spoke a little bit about beech material and his projects. James did his session. And then we had this 7:30 thing tonight, and all three of us said, what are we doing tonight? We didn't really know where we were going, but I'm always ready to go with a project that I'm probably behind on. So I said, let's just glue something up and let's use some products. So James is gonna zoom in on our little work table here. And I put some paper plates down so we don't trash the hotel tables. And so this is what's going on. In this example, we have a mid-body brake. So it's a pretty clean brake. And we're fortunate in that regard in that we can put this together, we can put some pressure on it, we can use a good adhesive, we can color it if we need to, and I almost always color it now just by default, and then we can let it cure. And I like to let mine go for a day, so we'll say 24 hours. And I like to have some squeeze out, just a little bit, so that if there's any chance that we have a depression or there's some kind of void in there, we've got it covered. So that's what the objective is. So we're going to put this thing together, and I strongly encourage dry fit. When you have epoxy in your hands, you're mixed, and you've got maybe it on your workpiece, that's not the time to figure out how I'm going to hold on to it, right? These are curvy things. They don't have a lot of great surface area to hold on to, and so there's a number of different ways that you can do that. If you're fortunate enough to have two parallel flat surfaces, and you can just simply put a Bessie clamp on it and squeeze it, and it'll hold it together, that's fine. This one's dry. I did this last night. So this was our little example of an easy clamping surface. So there's that. Now onto our little workpiece here. How are we going to apply pressure? A lot of conversation about how to hold on to slippery parts, or how do I hold this thing together? And for me, it's always going to be math. It's perpendicular to the brake. If you put two pieces of material together in your traditional woodworking world, you clamp them, right? And you clamp it perpendicular to the faces, and you squeeze it, and they stay. We don't mount our clamps at a skew, or you don't try and squeeze things at an angle, because when you apply pressure, the adhesive acts as a lubricant, and it's going to move, and we have alignment issues. So the very first step I take to make sure that I have my alignment right is to get my work holding right. So back to our little piece. We're going to apply pressure, and I want it to be perpendicular to the brake. So that means I'm going to put my Bessie clamp this way, and you can see what's going to happen. We're going to clamp on the top of a horn, and that's going to cause us all kinds of fits. It's going to want to pop, it's going to want to move, and with a simple call, I just cut out the shape of the actual tote and drop him in place. I solved my geometry problem without anything special. Okay, now, and I'm a one-man show, and I tend to work with one hand, and this is kind of my fitness test right here. If I can clamp onto that with one hand and pick it up and hold on to it relatively well, then I'm on the right path, okay? If you can't do that, and it takes three hands and your work partner to hold this together, then you're not ready for adhesive, okay? So I've simplified my clamping problem by simply making, and it doesn't have to be exactly parallel. It's pretty close. It's enough that I can apply my pressure and I'm gonna be good, okay? So as long as I was talking about one hand, I'm not doing a Bessie commercial, but these clamps are simply amazing. And it's the one hand test again, too. If I can open it and close it with one hand and work freely, that's why I'm sold. The old quick grip with the metal tang on them, remember those? And you put a lot of pressure on it, and then you try and release it, and it bites you. You know, Bessie is a quality product, and again, I like to invest in tools, and these guys got it going on. So again, not a Bessie commercial, but I'm definitely going to use Bessie clamps. So once we've got a hold of this, I think we've passed the litmus test. We know we're about ready, but let's take a closer look at the alignment. How are we going to ensure that this stays together and it stays exactly aligned? There are some options. One is to just dry fit it and see what's going to happen. And as I wiggle this around, it wants to move. So I know I need to secure this in some fashion. Sometimes you put these together, they're like their own puzzle piece. They just lock in. And if that's good enough for me and I can hold on to it, then I'm ready to apply adhesive. But in this case, there's a chance that it's going to shift a little bit. So I'm going to make just a little plug. It's just a little soft wood pine dowel, if you will. I'm not going to buy a dowel because dowels, no matter what you buy, will never fit where you need them. So I'll just turn this on the lathe, and while it's on my lathe, I'll check the fit. So I like it to be snug, and I'm going to place this dowel in one of my pieces, and that's going to serve as our alignment tool. Okay? And then if I drop the dowel into the other piece, you can see where this is headed. I've got the axis, right? That's the line of that bore, and it's super tight. Now when we apply pressure, it's going to close, and because the dowel is custom fit, it's so tight, as I just put that together, it holds it. As that dowel is so close, it's going to keep me aligned. And you'll see when we close this up that we're going to get a really nice looking joint. So, next step, let's close it up. I still haven't put any adhesive on this yet. I'm going to lay it down, and we're going to give it a squeeze. Okay, and now this is where my magnification comes into play. I'm going to start to take a look at it, and I'm a little bit off. There we go. Okay, so under magnification, I can see that that's still a pretty good tight. I like the line. The alignment's there. I'm running my fingers over the heel of it, and in the front, I don't have any relief. There's no edges there, and I'm good with that alignment. Okay, so I feel like we're getting close to our adhesive point. We're ready to go. I'm going to drop that caul off of there. We're going to pull it back apart. And now it's surface prep. So I'm going to set this down, and James can zoom in on that. Right there. There we go. So what's going on here? If I left the brake just as it were when it was sent to me, it's going to be oxidized. It may have debris or whatever else on it. But I always want to clean that surface. And I've used a wire brush, and I've used a little scorp, and I've lifted off some of the oxidized material or sawdust or whatever might be in my way. Sometimes there's loose little flags and fragments in there. Get those out of there too, because what's inside, no one's ever going to see again. We're looking at that perimeter. So I'll use, like I said, a little scorp or a Dremel, and the Dremel is a ball, and you can see that that's a ball tip. And I am going to relieve and remove material. I'm going to say 95% of that surface area, and I'm not going to touch the perimeter around the outside. So what that's doing for me is I'm creating, we'll say a 0.5 millimeter. Yep, stay right on that. Thank you. Cameraman's awesome too, by the way. I don't know if you can see that well or not, but I didn't touch the outside perimeter. So there's about a 0.5 millimeter all the way around. So if you think about it the way a clamshell closes, right, it's going to touch all the way around on the perimeter. And what's inside, right? The clam. So the clam is my epoxy. So I'm going to wet the whole surface. I'm going to make sure that everything is there. And I'm going to just stay away from the outside perimeter. And then when I put the two together, there'll be a little bit of a squeeze out. So the pressure I'm applying, theoretically, is applied all around the joint. That's what we're trying to bring to tight. If I left it face to face and I have adhesive in there, I've got hydraulic pressure, and there's a chance under magnification it's going to leave that a little bit open, but now you see that kind of a perimeter there. So I've already done this, and
You do that on both sides?
I do. Yep, I relieve both sides, and again I'm opening the pores, and I'm keeping the wood clean. That's my clean surface. And I've had a couple great conversations with folks here, guys that know. about using chemicals or acetone or whatever they're doing to clean the surface and remove the oils from the wood, and I just don't. I used to, and I've tried that, and I've glued many samples together without any prep at all other than dressing the surface, and I didn't see any difference. I think you kind of spoke to that too, right? Earlier when you were talking about your glue testing and...
In a freshly cut surface, I couldn't get a measurable difference with or without.
Okay. And
old surface, I don't know.
so that's it, yeah. Okay. Questions at all so far? We good? All right.
Just doing that by hand, right?
I did, yep, just by hand.
And you're leaving void, so to speak, because you're using that ball.
It's almost like the New England carved signs. You know how the relief carved? And you see that spoon carving in the back?
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing. I'm like miniature spoon carving and just removing the material. Yep. And I'll do that. If you want to hang out afterwards or whatever, you want to play with it, we can definitely do
Last
that.
thing you want to do is hit the perimeter.
Yeah, because now you're going to make a hole,
Right.
right? You're going to open up the hole. So
And you'll
I'm
have
just
less
leaving it.
surface area on the perimeter.
Yes, sir.
You're
Yep.
good. Okay.
That's it.
I always thought you wanted as much surface contact as possible for both.
That's the tight bond world, right? If I'm gluing two pieces of wood together and I'm using regular tight bond, it's relying on the contact and the pressure. So you put the glue together and you clamp it, and it needs to set. That's the 15-minute set time. And then you let it cure. And epoxy is going to chemically cure. It's going to dry no matter what. So I'm going to close my joint. I'm going to apply pressure around the outside perimeter to make that crack go away. And then inside my tote, it's chemically curing. It's going to dry, and I will leave epoxy in my cup so that tomorrow I'll check the cup. And what's in the cup is in the tote. So if this is cured and I can pop this puddle out of here and it's not gonna break and it's not gooey and I mixed it right, then my world is good and what's inside the tote is ready for stress. So that's the telltale sign. What's in the cup is in the tote. Okay, so I've done my dry fit, I've done my prep, I know how I'm gonna clamp it. I feel like I'm ready for epoxy. So here we go. I'm using System 3. You use your favorite epoxy. The experts that I've worked with at System 3 would tell me, don't use the 5-minute stuff. Gordon, I know you're behind, you're always in a rush, but if you use the 5-minute rapid cure, it's not gonna saturate, it's not gonna penetrate. You're gonna mix this up, it's gonna start to set, you're starting to cure, you're working your parts, you put it together, you've got 3 minutes and now it's cured, right? As opposed to this, we're gonna say 20-hour cure time, an hour open time. If I don't like the way this went together, I'll pull it back apart. I got plenty of time, so there's no rush. What do? If I'm using G2, somebody got one of the G2s, and if this is your epoxy, you'll see that it's a 2-to-1. That's why I get twice as much of the resin than I do the hardener. There's leeway. You have a little flexibility. You don't have to have a digital scale, and you don't have to measure this to the nth degree. You can be a little light on your hardener. But I will say, and again, this is the chemical engineers behind System 3, too much hardener is a problem. More hardener is not more better. It's not more faster. It's not gonna get you there. It's gonna make a mess. It won't harden. It'll stay sticky, and it won't fully cure. So I'm a little modest on my hardener, but my ratio is 2-to-1. And here's my simple method of making sure I have an accurate pour. I'm gonna put a dot in my cup. And this stuff lasts so long. I know when you look at the prices of some of this stuff, you think, my goodness, I'm fixing a tote. I'm not gonna blow my whole paycheck on this, but that's my little dot. So I just have a little tiny puddle, and that's the hardener. Now for my resin, I just put the same amount on each side, and that's how I kind of match the set. Okay, there it is. That's the science behind my mix. Okay. Now, if you eat at Chinese, you always have extra chopsticks. So I just use a chopstick or any little dowel, and we're gonna mix this up. for the sake of our camera, I'm gonna go a little bit big. I'm not stingy on my epoxy, but I don't mix a half a cup anymore. Because a lot of it ends up left over. We don't want to do that. Okay, so we have plenty of mix, and the hardener is a little bit amber. It's a little bit different color, and all I'm looking for is uniform. So it's just like a recipe. We're stirring the cookie dough or cake batter, whatever you want to call it. It's epoxy. And when I have it mixed, and I like the uniform color, and really that's all we have to do, then it's time to add something to it. And this is where that trans tint dye comes in. And again, I talked to somebody and they bought this product. These are about 25 bucks a bottle. I'm gonna use black, and I am literally gonna use a pinhead. We're gonna just use the tiniest little drop, and you'll see that it will just make this explode in black. So this is gonna last my entire lifetime. I don't know that it's even noticeable that I've used any, other than it's been opened. And there are several colors. And in the wood tones, there's coffee colored, there's a dark walnut, there's a cordovan, which has almost a purplish tint to it. And I like that because some of the rosewood has that hue. So I used cordovan a lot, and I used black a lot. And then there's a whole array of colors in between that I've not explored or played with. And if we do our job right and we're minimizing this crack, you're not gonna see the epoxy anyway. So let's do the coloration. And what I'm gonna do is just touch. That's one drop. That's 10 times too much. Too much is not bad, but I'm just saying if you're being a little stingy on your products, you didn't need it. So I'm just gonna touch the end of this chopstick, right? So I have this little pinhead dot, and when I put this in here, there's my puddle. Wow. Boom. It's amazing that I don't know what the word is, but
I used to mix a quart of epoxy at a time, and I would put in one drop
yeah.
for a quart.
Yep. So now we have our gooey black puddle of epoxy. This has a long open time. I want to say it's 90 minutes, something like that. We shouldn't need 90 minutes, but that's where we are. I'm just gonna dab this in place. I'm just gonna paint my surface with epoxy. I'm being generous, and I'm staying away from the outside edge. So I'm applying my epoxy to the surface that I prepped. And even if we had no epoxy at the very outside perimeter, I'm still okay with that, because I know that this is gonna have such an awesome bite that it's just not gonna come apart. And it's thick enough that it's not gonna run all over my bench or the conference table here. And there's that one. And I left our little sacrificial dowel in place. And if you're already ahead of me and you're thinking, how are you gonna get that out of there, Gordo? We're just gonna drill it out. I'll just run a drill up from the bottom and make it disappear tomorrow, and no one will ever know it was ever in there. And that's going to be our alignment tool. And I've only used half of the epoxy at this point. And again, I'm being generous, and I've stayed away from the outside perimeter. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so I leave that, right? Don't throw this away. This is our check. Because tomorrow this is going to be hard, and we're going to pop it out of here and check it for mix and make sure that I had my ratio right. there's two things about the ratio. If you're going by volume, it's 2 to 1. The instructions also allow you to go by weight, and the densities are different. So it's not exactly 2 to 1, but again, you have some leeway there. You can err on the side of being conservative with your hardener. Okay, so we're good. I think we're gonna put these two together. You like where we're going?
Cool.
I have a slight amount of lubricity there now, and we just closed our gap. So the epoxy is gonna cure. There's no need to clamp this. We don't need to squeeze it. And I say need, we don't need to. Now, if I did that with tight bond, it would fail, right? You need to have the pressure. That's the way it's designed. It's gonna cure under pressure. Taking our sweet time. We have a lot of open time. We're gonna apply some pressure to this guy. Boop. Okay, so that little squeeze out that happened is, I'm okay with that. What that's telling me is I had enough coverage and it's closed all the way around. And what I'm not gonna do is try and wipe that off. I'm not gonna smear it into the other pores, into the wood all around it and make a hardened mess. I'm just gonna leave it. And one of the things, I did a video on this, one of the things that I discovered is that at 12 hours, this is cured enough where it's soft and you can pull it off. And I don't mean to be gross, but it's kind of like a scab. Now if I can just get under it and I can, with a chisel, I can just peel this right off and then I have zero sanding, no worries. If I leave this on here and let it fully cure, I need to get it off of there somehow. And it's epoxy, so that would be a little bit difficult. But that's the entire process for me on a mid-body brake like this one. They're not all that clean and they don't go together that easily. And I just epoxied the table. Shh, don't tell me. Okay. But that is it. And are you zoomed in there? You're not. Okay, that's cool. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Do you generally use the black with rosewood, or you try to match with the browns in the middle?
I do both. I've started to use black more often, almost as a default. I do, and the one that I did last night is black. And again, you would perhaps argue that if your joint's so tight, what are you worried about the color for, right? What,
Sawdust or anything?
I don't. No, we talked about that this afternoon. I'm not put me in a headlock. I'm not a fan of the sawdust thing. I don't do that. Probably because I'm looking at it under 10x and greater. And if I mix sawdust up and I make a paste and then I press it into a void or I fill it all in and I sand it or file it, when you look at that under magnification, it looks like particle board. It doesn't simulate grain to me. And I'm more content if I have a wide open gap or a joint that needs a lot of attention or additional material. I would much rather plow a V through with a hand tool, epoxy a piece of rosewood in place, and then just peel it right off. And what you'll find is, again, this is not the secret. Maybe it is my secret. By working with rosewood on rosewood, that's half the battle. I can shave this, shape it, put it back together, and the texture's the same, the pores are the same, the coloration's mostly the same, and you just avoid so many after issues, such as coloration. If I'm using walnut, it doesn't look like rosewood. The texture's different, the color's off, and it's just a shade off. Now it looks like a repair. And that's okay if we're going for, functionality and you're just trying to put something back together. And people love to use accent woods, and that's great. That's a great artistic expression. But in most cases where I'm doing what I call true restoration, I'm trying to make it look like rosewood again. I want it to be whole, and it's just easier to plow that out and put rosewood back in place. And I've done that on some knobs. If we blow the bottom of a knob out, which is pretty common on the foot, I'll glue a piece on, and I'm using vertical grain as the knob is. I'll glue a piece on, I'll file it flat, and kind of like a hex or an octagon, I'll just keep filing flats and add material all the way around until I can turn it. And then you would think it would look like a turned segment bowl, but it's rosewood and it's dark. And once you turn it round again and those lines blend up, it looks pretty good. And it's hard to tell that until you look at the bottom of it and you think, wow, there's like 16 pieces on here. But people, I think if you can get past the I'm broken point, when people see a hand plane and it's been restored and nothing jumps out, I'm not missing a horn, I don't see a big crack, they move right past the wood and they start looking at other things. Where's the lever cap? Is it chipped? Are we missing a Japanning and whatever? What else is wrong with the plane? And that's kind of my goal, is to get past you start on the wood, and if you can move on to the metal, then you're halfway there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you had a joint like that, except you had a little hole in it, and then after 12 hours you peeled it away, would it pull out of the hole too?
It won't. Nope, it'll stay in there. Yes, sir.
What do you do with the plug?
The plug, I drill it out. Yep, I'm from the bottom.
What's the size bit that's perfect to not mess up?
I bought machinist bits in thousandths of an inch.
It won't matter, it'll disintegrate.
Yeah, you could go in there with a
1/8 inch.
1/8 inch, if you can get one that long or get in there. But yeah, 1/4 inch will take it out. I was overthinking it. Thanks, Tom. I was trying to get exact sizes, thinking that, someone's going to see it. My rod doesn't go in here. I'm catching on something. They're going to look in the bottom. They're going to see pine in there and think, oh, what the hell? So I was trying to clean everything back out and get that original bore. It doesn't matter. It's on the inside and it's gone. But that's what I have for our glue up. And what else do we have? I think that's it for the moment. Now, tomorrow morning I'll peel the squeeze off, the squeeze out off of there, and I think it'll come off really well. So, any other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, go ahead.
Consideration for the quality of the external finish that's on the wood already. I mean, some of it's chipped and it looks awful, and some doesn't have any at all. Does that affect your strategy?
It does, and usually it has to do with labels. If there's a Stanley label, people want it to stay. Okay, I understand that, I get it. I've not seen what I think is a convincing, repop that looks like an original Stanley. They're usually a little too teal for me or something. There's something about them, they don't look quite right. I like them, but I'll try and keep the original label. So I use the same stretch wrap that they wrap pallets with, and like saran wrap, right? Wrap it really tight in saran wrap. You're not using adhesive. The contact will stick to itself so you can protect the label. And then I will restore the finish on the top and the bottom if I need to. It really depends on the end goal, and we're talking about a wide array, I'm sure, but there's make it look new again kind of appeal, where you don't see any history and you don't see any dents and dings. And then I've had people that say they want this joint to go away, but don't mess with my patina, right? The owner's initials might be carved in here, or it's got some other minor nicks and dents. They want it all to stay. Just make the big defect go away, leave the history. And that's fun. And oftentimes I will do a restoration and then I'll distress it further, especially if I had to replace material. Now you have a perfectly clean, highly rasped surface that doesn't look like the rest, and it starts to stand out. So it's like body work on the center of a door. So I have a series of screwdrivers and little picks that I've rounded off and kind of my distressing tools, and I'll put the dents and the nicks back into it and try and make it look old again. So it depends on what the ultimate goal is. If it's going on a almost new looking, well, who sent me? Somebody sent me a brand new 55 in the box, never been used. It appears to have never been used. Horn's broken off. He's absolutely heartbroken. Well, you want that to look like it did, and that's new. So I did that restoration and I made it look new. And then earlier this afternoon, I talked about a Stanley #1 that I did a restoration on, and it had a lot of history, a lot of dents, and just, you could tell it was old, and that was so cool, but it was broken, and it was missing a big chunk. Well, I replaced the chunk, and then I distressed it, and I made it look like the rest of the tote. And it was out in the world here for a year, and then somebody wanted to restore it. And they were posting it online, and I'm looking at it, and I was like, I know this tote. And he got into it, and his comment was, it looks like it's been repaired before. You know, boy, this guy must have been 100 years ago, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, that was last year. But I just made it look really old. So he thought he was holding something historic, and they were, you know, the repair was from, you know, decades ago. So I take that as a compliment. But sometimes you're trying to disguise it and really make it look like it's old and camouflage things, and other times it's a collectible that has a box, and it's been broken. It's damaged. It was shipping damage, which is fairly common for me, and then you know, just the lost horn along the way. Okay. Yes, sir. Oh my God.
Would the leather aniline dye dye the epoxy also?
That's new to me, and that was that yours or Rex? Rex was talking about it earlier today. I'm not familiar with that product. Have you mixed that with epoxy? And
Yeah, aniline dye will go straight into epoxy. You don't even need to mix it with alcohol first. In fact, I don't know what that would do to epoxy. I just put some of the powdered aniline straight into the epoxy, and just like Gordon said, it just takes a speck and it just all turns black. And I've had great luck with it when I did color epoxy.
I use that quite a bit, and that's what I would guess too, is it would just a tiny drop would do the same thing.
And with the aniline dyes, I like to get them as a powder because they stay forever, and you just take a little denatured alcohol and mix up the amount that you need, and you never have to worry about it going bad or spilling or anything. Tiny, tiny little containers of the powder. And
Spilling bad when you get a black thick can.
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yep, we talked about that too. That's why I do wear gloves when I should. One more behind you, and then I'll come back up. Yes, sir.
Let's go to the extreme about finishing. Let's say that you have to take the rosewood down to bare wood.
Yep.
Which I've done a whole bunch of times, and no matter what kind of a finish it seems that I spray on it, you lose all the graining in the rosewood, and the damn things come out black, whether it's a knob or a toad or whatever. What spray finish have you found works as far as that the end product doesn't turn black?
The end product, here's my logic. I think high-end musical instruments in the luthier's world, and I hang out in a luthier group as well, not because I'm a music person or that I can play. It's a matter of they're working with some of the same things we are, and some of the techniques are transferable. And one of the products is, it is a nitro cellulose lacquer spray from StuMac. So Stuart McDonald is a website that serves the luthier world. And I use that. It's $29 a can, I think. When I lived in California, they wouldn't ship it to me. So California, that causes cancer, you can't have it. So it was hard to get to, but now I have a can. I love it. I don't understand it. I'm not a chemist to the level of, why does this look better than my Deft, lacquer, right. Deft satin. I use everything in satin. Right. But it does. So that's kind of a go-to. I'm going to spend a little bit more money if I'm working on a project that warrants a superior finish, or I know that it's a collectible, or we're talking. Sometimes I'm nervous. I've had a few planes that I'm not completely familiar with, so I look it up, and then I see a large dollar amount on similar planes, and then I start to freak out a little bit, and I realize that, hey, for $35, this guy's getting a deal, right? But I will use the StuMac product.
How do you spell that?
StuMac is Stuart McDonald, but their website is STEW-MAC. StuMac. Yep, StuMac has great nitrocellulose.
I gotta go take care of some ice cream.
I bet you do. Do you have a bicycle? You ride it around and bing, 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 bing. All right.
See everybody up there.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, question was here.
Do you almost always use the epoxy, even if you have to cut out a section?
I do.
To get flat surfaces?
I do.
Still use it?
I just started going to it. I just love it. Earlier they asked about CA glue. Somebody asked me, do I use CA? And the answer is yes. I will admit to you guys, I have a little bottle of Star Bond, right? It's the dark Star Bond CA. I use it for little chips. If I have a chip, I did a it's a round knob that's threaded and it was beaded, and a little chunk of the bead came out. Now, if I'm gonna do this and mix this material, it's a little thick and it's gonna wanna float, and I can't get my little chip to seat down, so I want something that's a little more fluid, and just a tiny drop of CA and press it in. And I do use the accelerator because I wanna keep moving, but I think you were saying accelerator, not a big deal, right? No difference. So I'll have to try that. But I've used CA. Other than that, I'm almost 100% epoxy. I'm comfortable with it now. I love the results. I've not had any failures. And it's just easy to me. I like the ability to mix what I need and then color it if I want to. And it's just easy to work with. I also have, I'll tell you a CA story. Wearing these glasses, right? You have to be careful of your soft tissues in your eyes and CA glue. And when I'm dealing with CA glue and I had my lens on and I do this and all of a sudden I start to burn, it's like, wow, I'm right here in my face. That's not good, right? So we can't have some of those fumes or the odor around your eyes. So this is, it's a low odor. It's just easy to work with for me. I had a bottle that started to solidify, and so I asked him at System 3, I said, what happens? Do I need to throw this away? Is there a shelf life? And he said, oh no, stick it in the microwave. It's starting to crystallize. He said, just heat it up, it'll be fine. So I did that, took the top off, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, and it's back to its state. So it lasts a long time. And again, I'm like everybody else. I don't just go hemorrhage money on products and buy stuff, but I do believe in the product, and if I pay a little bit more because I've always had good results and it lasts a long, long time.
What's the difference between the T88 and that G2?
G2. So G2 is, in their words, it's formulated especially for oily woods. It started in the marine environment with teak. And if you've worked with teak, it definitely has a slippery surface to it, and it's difficult to glue. And so you can prep teak and use G2 on oily woods, and that kind of translated into rosewood. And then it was just like wildfire through some of the Facebook groups where people started to stand by G2. So I reached out to them, and I started using G2. I like it, and then we started breaking things and testing stuff, and I was really happy with it. And I looked at some of their other products, and I saw the T88, which is a structural adhesive. And so again, I have a great connection there now. And they explained it to me that a structural adhesive, let's over-exaggerate it for a second. Structurally, if I want to adhere two items and we want them to stay together, they need to be able to withstand some vibration, some movement, and that's the advantage of a structural adhesive. It's not going to turn brittle, and it's going to have the similar bonding characteristics, so think structural. He said, Gordon, for what you're doing, it's not any different. You could use G2, the T88 is going to work well for rosewood, so take your pick. I don't think they're going to see much difference. So I bought T88, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. As you can see, the hardener and the resin come as the same size. So what I do know is that the T88 is a little thicker. So it's a little more like honey. And when I started to put it on things and I'm trying to close stuff, I could feel it. I'm waiting for it to ooze out. I'm thinking, okay. So there's a slight difference in just the viscosity, and I don't use it as much. If I have something that's completely blown apart and we're doing a Humpty Dumpty and I'm gluing big pieces together, I will go with structural and I'll put those in there first. And then when we get to the finer surfaces, I will use the G2. But those are the two products that I've been using. So that's a great question. Yes, sir.
I wasn't at the first one, so I don't know if you covered stuff like this, but so the glue is basically, it doesn't really move like an epoxy or something like that. What happens to the wood pieces that you're putting together as they go through expansion and contraction or heavy moisture or dryness or what happens? Can you tell you've got separate pieces then, or what happens in the joint?
Good question. Wood is hygroscopic, meaning you can dry it to an EMC or a moisture content of, say, 5 or 6 or 7%. If we put it into a humidity or a humid area, it can absorb some of that moisture, and that's the movement that you're talking about. with such a small cross section and this material, which in most cases is 100 years old, I've not seen the types of movement that have an adverse effect. Nothing has broken because of the humidity, or I've not had anybody tell me in Arizona or Maine that they're getting different results. What's your thoughts on that, James?
The thermal expansion of epoxy is almost identical to most woods, most hardwoods.
There you go.
The hydroscopic expansion is slightly different, but it's order of magnitude larger before it matters.
Okay.
You're talking like a 4-foot table before it's an issue.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Is that the smallest size bottle you can buy?
It is. I'm sorry. And guess what? I thought I had enough star power to make an executive decision for System 3. And I said, I have a lot of friends, because here's where I was going. If I had a surplus of rosewood and I could cut little pieces like this that would make a horn for you, and I had 2 little bottles of resin and hardener that would go together as a cute little kit, we would have a horn replacement kit. And so I said to the main marketing person, can you guys do a little bottle set for me in a smaller, like a blister pack? And he said, no. No. And I said, okay. And he said, Gordon, you're talking about more packaging, less product. Talk to me about a 55-gallon drum. Would you like that with a pump? Yes, we can do that. You know, so that was, unfortunately, that's the answer. Now, I feel like I'm among family, so I can admit some of these things. In one of my friendships I made online, I was trying to vet that out, and I said, would you buy a small piece of rosewood and enough epoxy to do your own? If I coached you through it or we had videos, would that be something? Absolutely. I said, well, you're my pilot. I'm going to send it to you. And I went to Hobby Lobby and I bought little bottles. They're smaller than the TransTint bottles. And so I squirted epoxy in and I measured, got it to them, put a rosewood in, and I sent it. And then I realized that now I'm shipping their chemicals, right? I don't have the labels that they have. I don't have, the safety data sheet, SDS information's available, but I started to find myself now repackaging somebody else's product and putting it in the mail. And I started to get uncomfortable, and I thought, no, I don't think we should do this. So his little project went okay. I'm not sure that he ever finished it, not on me, but that's about as far as it went. So I was chasing that rabbit, and I thought that it would be wonderful if we had smaller packages, or even little single use, snap off a tip, squeeze it out, mix it up, fix my tote, and I'd be good to go. But that's not gonna happen with these guys.
So how do you tell a customer that his fling's not worth an hour of your time to fix the tote?
Usually with a $sign. Yeah, it's not. What I've learned is that it's not for me to decide. That's the heirloom discussion, right? If it's Grandpa's, you know, this is Grandpa's number 8 and the horn's gone, can you fix it? I can. How much is it? You know, I feel like I could say $200 and they go, okay, great. When can I get it to you? But I'm not going to do that. So usually I can tell, and I started to create a little flow chart for, you know, and maybe this will be on my website, on whether or not you need to talk to Gordon, right? Can you fix it yourself? Do you want to fix it yourself? Is it a user? Then fix it, right? I'll talk you through it. I have videos. That's what kind of started me to push the information out. You guys can do this. And if I can get you to do some of those basic repairs and get you started, it'll take a little pressure off me and I can keep going. But I'm willing to share, and I wanted to put that information out there. But I also found myself in the collector world where, and that's what I said, I've had a couple planes on my bench that scare me. I'm not a collector, and I have a threshold where I quit. He's not going to be able to get in. Let me do that for you.
Oh, I just wanted to hear.
Yep. You got it. Oh, thank you. So.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do. I have. If you put Gordan Adison into YouTube, he's going to pull it up. And I do, and this is not a marketing session, I do have a website. Steve Heyman has put together an incredible Gordan Adison website. There he is. He's my man right now. So what a hero he is. I started on a website a year ago and muddled and messed and fussed with it and got nowhere. And that's what's missing in my in my ecosystem, as we talked about, so I'm learning great things from him. But I do have several videos out there, and I was trying to kind of run along the same lines of masterclass stuff. If you're an experienced woodworker and you've done restorations and you want to see something on the high end of what I do, there's videos out there. And then I backed up in the bottom one there, entry-level horn repair. I tried to bring it back to, what if I don't have a pattern maker's device, and I don't have all these fancy tools, I don't have all this stuff, I just want to fix a horn. How would I do that? So I took all my own tools away and I went to my bench, and I literally clamp it on the side of my bench with a Bessie clamp. I have one clamp, and we're going to work through it, and we're going to repair the horn with minimal tools and a low investment. And so there are several out there, and hopefully you'll find something out there that's useful. Some of them are just fun, and that was the crusty bottom of the ocean hand plane that's up here. Was somebody poking fun at me online when it was for sale on eBay. It was in Europe. Somebody pulled it out of the ocean, said, "Hey guys, a hand plane," and they put it on a piling at the dock, and it's covered in barnacles. And so somebody tagged me and said, "Gordon, how about you restore that one?" And I said, "Okay." So I will do that. And I reached out to him and I bought it. And it came to me, and it was in a plastic bag, and it still had the ocean smell, and some of the stuff was still rotting and decay, so it was kind of nasty. I let it dry, and then I just started working on it. And I couldn't get the furniture off it because it was rusted and caked, but I was able to restore it, and I did eventually take the pieces off, but I left the plane. I don't do metal work. I'm not a plane guy on total restorations, but I'll do the wood. So there it sits, and that was kind of a fun thing. But yeah, I will fix it if I can. I'll go after it.
Well, in a world where it seems like antique tool collectors take those secrets to their graves with you, I applaud you for sharing that stuff with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's the goal. That's the goal. So, well, you guys have been phenomenal. Thank you very much. Gordan Adison on YouTube, you'll find me. I try. I'm probably about a once a month person. I'll put something out there. I was trying to run a series of entry-level things and move up, and then talk about the tools and talk about work holding and kind of break it down, because some of the things that I assume that people would know or they would pick up on, I just kind of glaze past them. So I've been breaking it down and going into individual little pieces. So we're at 8:30. Rex Kruger's here. If you were not here at the earlier one, and James Wright, of course, is also part of this. Rex has a website. I want